Hello and welcome to a new year for our RAY Youth Research Dialogues. We are implementing this series on the discussion of evidence-based youth research findings since 2021. So welcome also to this fourth year. My name is Carmen Teubel-Kiviniemi. I'm the manager and the coordinator of the European Youth Research Network RAY, which is hosted by the Finnish National Agency for Education. And the network itself involves 35 partners, so national agencies of the European Youth Programs and national research partners. This first episode in 2024 is part of our so-called RAY monitoring editions. As a reminder, these special editions, they focus on our newest findings of the RAY monitoring service conducted with beneficiaries of both European youth programs. And you might remember or you might watch them. We started this series with our 2 youth research dialogue episodes in October and November last year. We were discussing first insights and, for example, program journeys. If you want to rewatch them, then please check out our event section on our RAY website. Yeah, today's topic is Empowering Tomorrow, Impact of the European Youth Programs, and we will discuss this along data from both the Erasmus Plus Youth, but also from the European Solidarity Corps program. And especially we will focus on competence development and the effects of the programs, for example, including questions like which competences are acquired and strengthened through the participation in the European Youth Programs, or what impact does the programs have on community and society level. Our speakers today are both from our RAY transnational research team, which is based in Berlin at Youth Policy Labs, a small research agency in the youth sector. Johannes Eick is a youth and civic engagement researcher. He's part of the research team, but also a teacher for social work at the University of Applied Science in Cologne. And Andreas Karsten is leading an international team of participatory research and public policy, as well as open data enthusiasts, including the RAY transnational research team. Great to have you both here. Our team today is Tomi Kielakowski, our moderator, and Domagoj Moric, our digital facilitator. Also thanks to both of you. And I wish you an inspiring dialogue and see you hopefully at the end of this episode for a short recap and the outlook. And now, Tomi, to you.
Hello, my name is Tomi Kielakowski and I will be your moderator today. When we do something new or when we change our surroundings, we learn. And then we have learned, we too have also changed. According to an educational psychologist, Peter Jarvis, learning is a process where a whole person, our body and mind, experiences social situations, and the experiences that are brought about this process are integrated into individual person's biography. The end result is a changed or more experienced person. According to Peter Jarvis, new social situations have the power of changing us and making us learn. Therefore, after having experienced something new, we are no longer the same person as before. Now, if this holds true, participating in youth exchanges will undoubtedly foster learning. This is because individuals face new social situations daily, perhaps even every hour. Encountering a different culture, meeting new people, conversing in a foreign language, and experiencing unfamiliar social scenarios require a departure from our established habits. Throughout this process, individuals acquire new skills and competencies. Furthermore, fundamental human questions such as who am I, what can I do, how do I interact with others around me, and what am I good at, are likely to receive new answers. Today we will hear about the new results of array monitoring. These results tell about the impact of European programs in the post-pandemic condition on individuals, on organizations, and on youth work. Andreas and Johannes will present to us how the participants evaluate their competencies, knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values, and how they have developed after having taken part in different programs. This enables us to see the impact of these projects. And now, before they go into the presentation, I would like to remind you in the audience of the great possibility of joining our dialogue. We invite you to ask questions either on Facebook or on YouTube chats or via Slido. Simply go to slido.com and type in the code which is displayed now on the screen. Johannes will be our first speaker today. Johannes, the floor is yours.
Hi, thanks for having me. As Tommy said, Andreas and I will present results from our monitoring surveys on the European youth programs. And I am going to kick our little journey off with findings of one particular area of inquiry, namely the competence development of participants. But before we do that, let's start with some basics in our surveys first. Overall, we gathered a total of 30,321 responses across all the surveys. And this is great for us because it means that we pushed past the responses that we had in our previous monitoring cycle, which happened in 2019 and 2020, and it came in at a total of close to 28,000 responses. And against the background that external factors like the pandemic led to less project implementations during the past years, which of course equals less potential respondents for our surveys, we are quite satisfied with these numbers. Those 30,000 responses of our current survey round are split into roughly 25,000 responses for Erasmus Youth and around 5,000 for the Solidarity Corps. And this also reflects on the fact that Erasmus is by far the bigger program. Andreas and I will show results across a variety of project types from both European youth programs such as youth exchanges and participation projects, which I will refer to as youth projects, then the youth worker mobility and the training and cooperation activities, the individual and team volunteering, the solidarity projects, as well as networking and education activities. For both programs, we will also show some responses from project team members. So watch out for those blue and yellow bubbles because they will indicate which result belongs to which survey. The first results I present are from the cluster of intercultural competences, which is one of the major areas that the youth work community often refers to when talking about the effects that international youth work has on personal development. And our results, as you already can see, reassure us that we actually can do so with confidence. The first item asks whether participants have improved their ability to communicate with people who speak another language. And this item does not only refer to developing foreign language skills, but of course also to various types of nonverbal communications. The respondents are invited to answer a 5-point Likert scale from disagree strongly and disagree to a neutral ground, neither agreeing nor disagreeing, to agree and agree strongly. And here we see the results from participants of youth projects. You see that on the top right of the chart. And we see that 88.5%, so nearly 9 out of 10 respondents indicated improvement in communication with people who speak another language. And nearly half of the respondents even agreed strongly to that item. The next item for improvement is getting along with people who have a different cultural background. And this time the results stem from young people who participated in individual or team volunteering. Agreement is slightly stronger than in the previous item, but the pattern remains basically the same. 90% indicate improvement, of which 50% agree strongly to improvement. There are only around 2% denying improvement in intercultural competences and around 7 to 8% neither agreeing nor disagreeing. And actually, it's up to further interpretation if these undecided respondents have yet to undergo the reflection processes necessary to be aware of the competence development, or if there are other causes factoring in. The next competence area I want to show you are discursive competences. We developed items around participants being able to take part in societal and political discourse and in discussions in their everyday life. The first item is again looking from the perspective of volunteering projects, and this time they were asked if they improved their ability to reflect and to think critically. Again, the disagreement is quite low, with around only 3% in total. 50% agree, 30% agree strongly to have improved their critical thinking, and a good 15% remain undecided. Another aspect of discursive competences is the ability to constructively engage in discussions, which we phrased as negotiating joint solutions when there are different viewpoints. Participants from youth projects, again, responded quite similar to this item than volunteers did to the previous one. This time, only slightly better, with 3% disagreement, a little less than 50% staying undecided, and a little more than 80% agreeing to have improved that ability. So overall, we see that discursive competences are somewhat of a striking element of the personal development that is induced by participating in the European youth programs. And in my opinion, it would definitely be worthwhile to have a closer look at the intricacies of these areas. The last area of competences we will present today are transformative competences. Those are referring to empowering young people to actually become agents of change, which is becoming more and more important in the face of societies impacted by polycrisis. The agreement, yes, that's the slide. The agreement to improve the ability to interact with policy and decision-making, as you see here, lies at over 60%. This is remarkable, I would say, because this transformative competence is far more complex and challenging than the other competence areas we discussed so far. Here, 21.7% neither agree nor disagree, and 5.5% disagree or disagree strongly. And another item we asked in the area of transformative competences was, through the project, I improved my ability to engage in tackling societal challenges. And here you see that the agreement is quite high, with 87.2% agreeing or disagree or agreeing strongly. And if you look here, it's from the Solidarity Project's respondents. And this finding is actually in line with the other data concerning Solidarity Projects, because this, like comparing with the other project types, Solidarity Projects, they seem to be far more oriented on social impact and less on personal development. With this, I close my sneak peek on the data that we have around competence development, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Johannes. Next one is Andreas, who will continue on the organizational and communal impact. Andreas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Johannes. Before I dive into some aspects of an impact on people, networks, youth work, and society, let me just assure you that we do conduct our research in a gender-balanced team. And those of you who have seen our youth research dialogues before have also seen some of our other colleagues on the team. Apologies for being a little bit dude-heavy today. It just so happened to be the availabilities on our team. But the research standing behind this is conducted very differently than it maybe look on the surface, especially important maybe for the people who watch us for the first time. So the first area of impact I would like to talk about this afternoon is intercultural impact, one of the key areas of the objectives of both programs. So we have two items picked here, just the same as Johannes did around competences. The first one is appreciation of cultural diversity. Here we asked respondents to say whether they appreciate cultural diversity more than before the project they were involved in, to the same extent or less than before the project. And you see here that 2/3 of participants in the European Solidarity Corps in individual or team volunteering said they appreciate cultural diversity more than before their project. Quite an impressive result, and we'll talk a little bit, I think, in our discussion whether the positivity of some of our findings actually is valid and holds true. The second aspect is around developing empathy, quite a crucial dimension of intercultural coexistence and acceptance, tolerance, and living together in intercultural societies. And here you see, again, the 5-point Likert scale that Johannes already explained. And again, quite an overwhelming majority of participants, here the example from youth projects in Erasmus Youth, who say they actually feel that they have become better at empathizing with other people through the projects that they were involved in. The second dimension is around developmental impact of people, of youth workers and youth leaders in the program. Here we have chosen 2 examples from the educational activities organized under TCA and then NET. The item that you see here is whether or not respondents have become aware of competences they want to develop further. And you see here that agreement is still quite strong, but also nuances actually matter. And you see that 28% agree strongly, not quite as many as we have on some of the other items, but still far more than half of all respondents who agree or agree strongly and say they have become aware of competences they want to develop further. And a very similar picture for respondents from activities for further education of youth workers and social workers involved in the European Solidarity Corps here under the NET activities. The third aspect I want to shine a very quick spotlight on is strategic impact on organizations. So we have asked here whether or not participation in the activity, here the example of youth worker mobilities, a project type in Erasmus Youth, whether they had an impact on their network and organization. You see the 5-point Likert scale here and an additional item over there on the right, not applicable for youth workers who may not be involved in a network and or organization at the time and attended the organization as a freelancer. And then a second aspect, the ability to strengthen international dimensions in youth work, also an aspect that comes from the example of youth worker mobilities in Erasmus Plus with a very overwhelmingly positive response. Yes, the activities in Erasmus Youth that our respondents attended did help to strengthen international dimensions in youth work. That brings me very swiftly to the strategic impact on the youth sector, on our field. Again, we have chosen just 2 items to illustrate the point. The ability to strengthen diversity in their work. Here again, taken the example from participants of NET activities under the Solidarity Corps. And you see that the vast majority of respondents say, yes, these activities actually help to strengthen diversity in their work. And the second item that we have picked here to illustrate this point with the example of TCA participants and respondents, asking them whether they have learned more about strengthening youth-led youth work. And again, you see more than 2/3 of respondents say, yes, we actually have learned more about how to do that. Now let's have a quick look at strategic impact on communities, something that we are of course always interested in. And here I have a couple of more items. With the example of solidarity projects, where you asked respondents whether or not they feel connected to the community more or less than before the project and or to the same extent. And you see here that almost 2/3 of participants of solidarity projects say they actually feel connected to their community more than before their project in the European Solidarity Corps. Really quite a cool result. Here we have asked project teams whether or not they judged that the intercultural dimension of their project was appreciated by the local community. And again, majority says yes, but you also see there that 15% said neither agree nor disagree. Certainly something that we'll look into and see whether we can find out more about the reasons behind that. The local community has become more aware of the potential of volunteering, is something we asked project teams in the European Solidarity Corps, and you see very similar to the item before, almost 15% not quite sure, neither agreeing nor disagreeing, and the vast majority either agreeing or agreeing strongly that this is the case. And then here we have an item that looks maybe a little bit confusing in the beginning, but we have asked respondents how close they feel to Europe before the project began. A little bit of a tricky question methodologically because we asked them after the project, where of course their question is already tainted by their experience, but nonetheless, if we look at the next slide, you see the development just by how the curve moves over to the right on a scale from 0, I don't feel close at all to Europe, to 10, I do feel very close. And you also see it in the statistical values, the median shifting from 6 to 9. And so there's really quite a massive change there in how closely connected. In this example of the data point that we have chosen, participants of youth projects in Erasmus Youth, how close they feel to Europe after they have experienced their project as a part of the program. Again, a very, very positive result that we are quite happy to share with you today. And with that, back to you, Tommy.
Thank you, Johannes and Andreas, for your presentation, and special thanks to Andreas for reminding us that although, as you said, our panel is quite dude heavy today, the Ray research community certainly isn't. Yeah, before they go into the dialogue, I would like to remind the audience that you have a possibility of asking questions, which we will then direct to either Johannes or Andreas or to both. So please use YouTube, Facebook, or Slido using the code that you see on the screen now. Now, to start the actual dialogue, first question goes to both of you. It seems that the results are highly positive and there's a profound impact to be proved. As a researcher, what catches my attention is that the number of people disagreeing is really, really small. It's only a couple of %, if even that. So based on your experience as researchers, how common is it to find such an agreement? Who wants to go first, Johannes or Andreas? Okay, Johannes will start. Yeah.
Actually, I was sending over to Andreas.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
So Andreas will start. Yeah.
I have to say I'm not so surprised by it because, first of all, participation in these programs is voluntary, right? Young people choose to be there. Youth workers choose to attend further education and training activities. And that means, there's a very different set of motivation. Then I think in part it's the feature of non-formal education, which is by design very participatory. So even if something doesn't quite work to your liking, in most activities you have a very good chance of actually saying that and influencing that and changing it while the activity happens. But then also remember that these programs have been around for 25 years in different shapes and forms. And it would be a little bit embarrassing if the core features of the program after a quarter of a century wouldn't work as well as they did. So no, as a researcher, I'm not very surprised.
Yeah, I would.
Yep. Go on, Johannes.
I would stress the point because when we look at the previous survey rounds, we see the same pattern. Disagreement was always quite low.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So second question. Now, as you mentioned, these programs have been evaluated for quite a long time. Is there something in the current results that surprises you?
Shall I go?
Go.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's a little bit of a lame duck, but it's surprising that there are not that many surprises in terms of differences in comparison to the previous survey rounds, because we have different circumstances this time. We have a pandemic going on, we have an inflation, we have conflicted times, and we have, most importantly, existing research on how these major crises affected young people. And therefore, it's surprising to me that our results like rarely show these impacts in a sense that young people experienced their learning mobility experience more negatively. So despite all the overall negative trends in livelihoods and the well-being of young people, the European Youth projects manage to maintain and provide high quality experiences for young people, which is a great surprise.
Yes, do you want to continue, Andreas?
Well, the one that surprised me also positively is how well the new thematic priority of both European Youth programs around sustainability and greening the programs is already working. I expected that to be maybe a more critical area of policy priorities, but much to my and our surprise, that part of it, I mean, has lots of room for development, which is fair enough. It's a new priority of the programs that has been spelled out in this program generation for the first time. So it's not doing as well and not doing as profoundly well as participation and inclusion and diversity, the two much longer standing priorities. But still, for it being a new policy priority, it's already doing quite well, which I was very happy to see.
Yeah, I think we are all happy to see that. Andreas, there's a question on Facebook that's directed to you. It's about concepts used. So how do you define a strategic impact?
Oh, good question. So the way we have used it now in the presentation is not connected to an elaborate concept. It's simply to say, this is impact that goes beyond the individual participant and their attendance at an event and their personal and or professional development, and reaches out to either their organization and network or to the youth sector as a field, be that at local, national and or European level, or be that the communities and society. So just sort of crossing the border from personal professional development of the individual person then to the outside world, let's say.
Yeah, thanks for the audience questions. Keep them coming. We will ask them along the way. So let's go and look at the individual competencies. So the results that Johannes showed, they demonstrate that the impact of European programs on the intercultural competencies is quite significant. How does this compare with the earlier findings on participating in European programs?
It aligns well, actually. Since our first survey rounds in 2015 and 16, the strong agreement was always around 50%. So intercultural competence developments really remains a reliable, strong suit of the European Youth programs. And to me, this is totally reasonable, because if we think about how the programs are structured, you put it yourself in your introduction, international exchange, getting in contact with young people from different countries, experiencing yourself in unfamiliar settings, this lies at the heart of the European Youth programs. And as for the language item specifically, I also mentioned it briefly. I'm quite certain that the strong agreement does not only stem from young people developing foreign language skills, but really from experiencing, and often for the first time, that they can communicate with others despite not sharing a common language. And experiencing that is often quite meaningful. Yeah.
That perhaps is the easiest thing to understand. Then you go to a foreign country and you speak foreign languages you have not used before, perhaps not on the daily basis, and you meet new people. So of course you learn, but there's a deeper element involved as well. Well, one of the new things that has been studied in the RAY monitoring is the issue of solidarity. And of course, solidarity is one of the key goals of the EU Youth strategy. I'm quite fond of the statement by the former president of the Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker. He stated that solidarity must be voluntary, it must come from the heart, it cannot be forced, it cannot be imposed. So Johannes, how well, in your opinion, are the programs able to create conditions for solidarity?
First of all, I think it's a beautiful way of describing solidarity. If we look at the results, the programs, of the programs as an instrument, for example, to foster active citizenship, or young people actively standing up against discrimination, or being more sensible on matters on diversity and inclusion, or if we look at what Andreas showed us in connecting to the local community, I would say that the programs are well equipped to create conditions for solidarity. And young people also value them as such, because in comparison to previous monitoring rounds, we now observe a shift in motivation of why young people are participating in the projects. A little less for personal development and more for social impact and social reasons. And then also one more point, there are project types which in each program that are especially well equipped to foster solidarity. And not only in this, as you put it, preparatory sense of creating conditions for embracing solidarity, which we can say that they're doing it later then, having the impact later, but because they are by design acts of solidarity. So solidarity projects and the participation projects. And we have a qualitative mini-study on solidarity projects as well, which underscore the motivation of young people to really want to do something good for the community when they engage in these projects. And this, to my understanding, is solidarity per definition.
Right, we have two clarification questions from the audience. Andreas, perhaps you would like to take them. Mm-hmm. First one asks, what is the period when the research was conducted? And are the findings available yet as paper or as an online report?
So, period in which the research was conducted, we were asking respondents of projects that were financed under the new program generation, so the one that started in 2021, the current one, and that happened in 2021, 2022, or 2023 until the 30th of June. That was our cutoff point. We conducted the surveys in late summer and autumn last year. And no, there is no paper or online report available, though all the sneak peeks that we are providing in, for example, the Youth Research Dialogue monitoring edition, you can all find on our website. So the data that we present here or that we present in meetings of national agencies and with the Commission, they are all available as sneak peeks, but the reports in paper and online form will become available this spring.
Right, there's yet another audience question. It's about what sort of explains what's behind the rather good results. So what in particular is contributing to this situation? We have nice results. And another way to formulate that question is what could be recommended to future projects? So any idea what causes these wonderful results we have learned today?
I mean, it's, I think I'm understanding the question. Hi, Aisha, to be in particular relating to the circumstances that these projects were often implemented in, framed by the pandemic, framed by a war, framed by conflicts, framed by inflation, framed by a climate crisis, and that not only us were surprised to see the results to be this good. What we see in other parts of our surveys is that the quality of these learning mobility experiences also come at a price, right? It takes organizations, it takes project teams, it takes everyone involved also on the national agency side in managing and running the program a lot more effort to make these kind of learning experiences possible in our day and time. So my recommendation would not necessarily be from the findings that we have to individual projects. My recommendation would be much more to the stakeholders that have the power to influence the framework conditions for the program, acknowledge more than we currently do how hard it has become for every single person and organization and structure in the program to make these learning experiences possible and equip them with the necessary financial and human resources. That is happening to some extent already, and we are very glad to see that, but it should happen more and faster.
Johannes, you also presented the results of the volunteers, and two-thirds of them stated that they respect cultural diversity more than they did before joining the programs, and roughly 1/3 said that they respect this at the same level. This, I think, it's a bit different compared to other questions. In your opinion, how should we approach this? Are some of the volunteers already so sensitive to cultural diversity that the project doesn't really change it? Or are they experiencing in the program somewhat different, and there is less impact on this dimension? So do we know something about this, or is this pure speculation?
I would say that you're pointing at one of the most discussed questions, methodological questions within our network. It is a methodological issue that we are always facing when trying to measure development in attitudes by only surveying the respondents after their experience. So ideally, we would be able to survey them before they have the experience on their attitude and then afterwards and see whether anything changed. But we can't do that for numerous reasons. And therefore, we are working with this working remedy, actually. We are asking, I am now able to do this or that better, worse, or just as well as before the project. And yes, generally, I would agree that there are two interpretations to those 30% this time that didn't improve. Their, in this case, respect for cultural diversity. The first is, as you said, that their respect for cultural diversity was already top tier before they entered the activity. And the second one is that the activity itself didn't provide meaningful experiences in this regard for those 1/3 of participants. And to answer that, which interpretation holds more value, I would say there are two things from my point of view. The first one is we need a study on who's participating in the programs and who isn't, to figure out whether this implicit concern of ours, if we are only reaching high-profile participants, actually is true or not. And the second one is, and this is maybe even more important, we need the dialogue with our practitioners from the field who can share their experiences and contextualize the data from their point of view to see whether there really sometimes is a disconnect when it comes to cultural diversity in this case, or if they are really working with those very well-educated young people already.
There's one more audience questions we need to tackle. It's about differences within the respondents. So they are asking, did you find some differences within the age group, or did you find differences with the different background, different parts of Europe? So Johannes, you wanted to take this.
I can't really talk about age group, but what I can talk about is the gender. Gender has been, and please, Andreas, correct me if I'm wrong, or if you want to add on what I was saying, but gender has not really made any significant difference within the respondents. And this survey round, we see that there is a minor gender gap coming up. And we don't know yet. We need to discuss how it came to that. It might be that this relates to some overall trends of radicalization, maybe in young people. Young men are more inclined towards radicalization than women, and therefore less open for those more progressive attitudes, or if there are things on activity level coming into play, or how to interpret this at all. This is one of the differences that I can speak about. I can't really speak about age groups. I don't know if you can, Andreas.
I can. There is interestingly very little difference that relates to age or geography in terms of origin. There is a difference in newcomers to the program and those who return to the program, and that difference can, for some items, be quite distinct. The learning experience tends to be more powerful for people experiencing the program for the first time, which I think surprises no one. But no, there are no age-related and or location-related differences between respondents. There are, of course, some projects that don't do as well as others, right? There are always outliers. There are things that go wrong. Also in the program where, participation is voluntary and things are going extremely well overall. There are, of course, projects where that maybe isn't the case on a particular day or, maybe even for the entire project. But they're not related to a particular geography, location, age group, or anything like that.
Andreas, you talked about the impact on youth workers and their background organizations, and you showed us that there's impact on a personal level and on an organizational level. Now it seems to me that the impact on the personal level seems to be stronger or quicker. So how would you evaluate these results? Do we have to wait a bit longer to see the organizational impact, or is organizational impact in general more difficult to achieve within the programs?
It's more difficult to achieve. I mean, it's by majority participation in activities of both programs is on an individual basis, right? So one person from an organization or network comes from a youth club, from a youth organization. They usually go on their own and then participate in a training course. If we talk about youth workers and youth leaders, they come back and then have to transfer that into their organizational context. And that is, as an individual person, quite hard to do. It is then also quite hard to do in a sector like ours, where many organizations are not sustainably financed in many parts of Europe. And we know from research that we have done previously and that we are currently also undertaking around competence development and transfer of competence development and learnings into organizations, that this crossing of impact from person to organization is a very difficult one to orchestrate, and that organizational learning is not easy to achieve with the conditions that we provide in the program. And we have already a set of recommendations around that, and we'll also come out with more, I'm sure, including to develop activities where it's actually possible to participate with a small team from the same organization, in particular around development and training and further education.
We are approaching the end of our dialogue today. Unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff that we need to discuss further. One of the dimensions measured is the impact on the local level. And according to project teams, there is growing awareness about the potential of volunteering, and also growing awareness about intercultural dimensions within local communities. So how would you compare these new results to earlier studies on the impact of the programs? Has the pandemic changed the impact somehow? And this one goes to both of you. If you want to continue, Andreas, and then Johannes, whatever you want to add.
Oh, that's a hard one. I mean, in part because we asked these questions to respondents of project types that haven't existed in that shape in previous program generations, so it's a little bit difficult to compare these. But and then one clear caveat of our methodology and our research scope is that we ask project teams and project respondents, but we have yet to actually interview people in the local community, right? The second part of that interface. And in the past and now, similar to sort of the bridge from individuals to organizations, the impact of projects and then their outreach into communities is at quite a different scale. And I don't think we see so many succinct differences in the project types that exist, but we do see a very different kind of relation to community work and community embedment in the project types that have been specifically made for that purpose. So solidarity projects, for example, specifically developed for that purpose and also seem to function to that end very well.
And the last word of this dialogue goes to Johannes.
I would keep it short. I would definitely underscore what you said last, Andreas. we now have project types that are meant to engage with local community and that are being cherished for that. We did a qualitative studies with stakeholders of the Solidarity Corps, and they were really highlighting that the volunteering aspect goes strong within the Corps, stronger than in Erasmus Plus Youth. And those organizations from the volunteering sector, they haven't been reached by the Erasmus Plus projects, but they have been reached by the European Solidarity Corps. So we are also maybe engaging with new organizations which are very well embedded in local communities, and now having them into the programs might also be a great asset for us.
Thank you, Johannes. Thank you, Andreas, for this dialogue. And of course, we, meaning the European Youth Field, we expect to get more results and will follow your work closely.
Thank you.
And big thanks also to the audience for joining us on our first Youth Research Dialogue in 2024.
And in case you didn't miss, in case you missed this and you would like to rewatch it because there were so much interesting talks around this topic, we have good news. The live stream will be available afterwards here on Facebook and on YouTube as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tommy and Tomogoy, to you and to Andreas and Johannes, of course. We will continue our youth research dialogues next month, so save the date already for the 5th of March. This is when our next youth research dialogue would happen. This will be still, the episode will be still part of this Ray monitoring editions. And yeah, check out our Ray website and our social media channels for any updates. We also want to invite you to share with us in what kind of topics and findings from the Ray monitoring service you're interested in, or maybe from other Ray research projects, and then we try to include your wishes also. We are happy to welcome you soon, so thanks a lot and take care. See you soon.